Athletes aren't any different when it comes to the stresses of everyday life and society and the challenges that face them. It's important that the message is consistent and continues to get out there. Mental health is just like everything else. You have to pay attention and you have to explore ways to heal. My name is Ken Jenkins. I'm a former NFL running back from back in the 80s. I was never clinically diagnosed with anything, but there have been times in my life when I felt less than worthy. I came through an era where, mental health was not talked about very much in the Black community. It's something that's been taboo in our community for a really long time, but we're getting better. And you have even seen the NFL put a huge campaign out there about mental health and mental wellness. Those campaigns, I hope, are making an impact in our community.
For Black men in this country, sport originated as a way of entertainment initially and really trying to overcome racial prejudice. And beyond that, we began to understand that sport gave us more access. That can become overwhelming. So in that particular frame, sport begins to become a stressor because it is the way of competition. It is the way of removing socioeconomic disadvantage. If we look at NIL deals now, and we think about the stress associated with sport now for high school athletes, it is really about how can I overcome economic hardship. Everyone's not going to be an elite level performer. Everyone is not going to have an opportunity to go to some of the premier institutions. And so for some, managing that stress now, anxiety, disappointment, depression, becomes more relatable.
We experience these great, magnificent highs and some really low lows. And it takes a person with quite a strong constitution to be able to deal with those things in such rapid succession. We've seen lovely, big teddy bear guys who just treat everybody with love and respect become very angry. We've also seen men sort of withdraw from society, withdraw from their friendships, withdraw from their clubs and in their groups. They don't want to admit that they're hurt, especially with athletes. They feel like they've let people down if they admit that they're actually injured.
It is no longer just I'm competing in sport because I enjoy it. I'm now competing in sport because there are opportunities associated and tied with sport. And you have to really think about it. If an athlete is able to excel at a level and perform well enough, there are generations that are being impacted by their body and their ability to perform on that stage in that given moment. And so what we understand is when you view the opportunity to provide for your family differently than those who may be more affluent or middle class, you have a certain drive. And what that does lead to is identity foreclosure, athletes who are so pressed about practicing and perfection and high-end thinking. I have to. There are no other options in that instance. I have tons and tons of data and material from athletes who are gold jacket wearers, Hall of Famers, who have said that I used to practice over and over again because I had to get my mother or my family out of this situation. We're thinking about sport as something that is vital, not necessarily from a voyeuristic aspect, but vital for their health and safety. And just like any parent who goes to work to provide for their children, these student athletes are putting it all on the line to provide for their families and move their families forward. And so you have to think about it. When we're overrepresented, what led to that? And so it's not always the young person who has access to the brand new track and field facility. Sometimes it's the young person who has a goal and then a goal, because that is what it's going to take for them to live their best life. And we want to be able to see them be more holistic in how they excel as well as prepare for life after sport.
You want to track your progress from a neurological standpoint when you're in these games that are subject to traumatic brain injury. Brain injury happens when the brain splashes against the head of the front of the skull or the back of the skull. What we've come to know is that a second traumatic brain injury, if the first one hasn't healed, produces the most dramatic problems for an athlete. Healing is the most important aspect of this conversation. I can tell you from firsthand experience working with the NFL concussion settlement that it can be devastating to a family. We do it because we do realize that this is an opportunity of a lifetime. It's an opportunity to provide generational wealth for our families and perhaps even get us prepared for when the game's over and have the resources to get into whatever our next career is. But that's what's at stake here.
Fans want a blood sport. Fans appreciate the elegance. In some instances, when we think about boxing, they call it this sweet science of boxing. And I think ultimately when fans are able to connect with that level of brutality, violence, they begin to see it as more sensational. Injuries that are traumatic and severe and significant can occur throughout every sport. And once those things occur, you do have athletes who are now faced with returning to sport, returning to competition, or potential retirement. That brings about a great deal of anxiety because now you're thinking about, for some, access. I'm about to have limited access. For some, I'm about to have limited opportunity.
We have come to know clearly in the NFL concussion settlement that there are long-term effects of traumatic brain injury that cause CTE. Professional athletes can be the ones who make the biggest difference in communities of color in particular who ignore this issue more so than other communities.
If you're going to be a student athlete, if you're going to be a youth athlete, if you're going to be a professional athlete, you're going to have to develop not only your ability to understand what directions are being given to you, but also your ability to overcome fear, anxiety, worry, and loss. And so sport teaches so many things to young people, young adults. And so it begins at a very young age because you're trying to understand how to give your best effort. And so if you can imagine, you develop your mind to compete and give your best effort and give your best performance. But if you're not doing the same things for your mental and emotional well-being, you're gonna find yourself overexerted.
You know, after football, I always saw myself as this great provider to be able to provide for the family. And there were times when I just was struggling to do so. And I'm not sure that I didn't at some point experience some types of perhaps depression. The fans think that we're playing this game and they don't really understand the magnitude of hours that go into preparing your body, spending those hours and hours in the gymnasium, all the film study that we do, so that the things that you see and the things that you react to on the field, they become instinct.
Right now I work with high school, professional, retired athletes and their families. So I've been working in this field probably since about 2010, working with student athletes and now working with professionals and retired athletes. It's essential to be able to understand as you're developing the body, you have to develop the mind. And so mental health, just as you're getting stronger and faster on the field in the gym, you have to be very intentional about spending that same amount of quality time, effort in developing your mind, your resilience, your ability to be compassionate, your ability to express your emotions. All of that is very essential to being an elite performer.
One of the things that athletes need to do is to start a relationship with a neurologist so that your mental health and your cognitive health can be tracked and traced, over the years. Mental health is the same as your physical health. When you catch something early, you may actually be able to fend off further damage or further decline. I mean, we hope that one day they can diagnose CTE without a person have to die, and then they find CTE in their brain during an autopsy or after they've donated their brain. And as science improves, it may be recognizable that you are a candidate for those new treatments.
When we're thinking about traumatic injury, when we're thinking about the reality of injury, we are really thinking about how do I make sure my mental capacity is more resilient as I am about to continue this process or go through this process. And it takes a lot. It takes a lot of support. So I feel like it's very significant in terms of how we have to arm our athletes against anxiety and depression, because it can mean a lot, not only for their present stability, but also future gains, future income, and future career.